Hello and welcome to another episode of the CPMC podcast. I am MC, as always, joined by CP. What's going on, Chris?
Matt, before we get going here on tonight's league, I think we need to stake our claim here. We talked about it a week or two ago, but I am like all in on Antonio Gibson this offseason at his price. He's so cheap. You can get him for like 2/3. He's going in like the 14th round of redraft. I mean, if there's one guy like I want to take some shots on, like last couple seasons, we always like to add a guy like Samaje Perine, and we're in on him again. And I think Antonio Gibson kind of fits that bill this offseason for us. I'd love to go out and get him in some more leagues. I know there's a bit of hype on Twitter lately, might have drove his price up, but I think he's still a buy.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I wish we did get in on him a little bit earlier. We've done, probably 10 drafts or so this offseason already. And I don't think we were as aggressive as we should be. I mean, all things equal, that's a backfield to stay away from in spades. But you're right, at value, I mean, you got to be taking him where he is.
I mean, it's just easy production, right? Even if it's just a bye week fill-in, like, or it's just easy depth, easy production. Like he's never gonna, probably not gonna be a game breaker, but I mean, if he gives you just solid outings week in, week out, I'm good with it. I mean, especially at cost is kind of the key phrase here.
Yeah, and think about the hype that surrounded him 2 years ago. Everyone loved him. Then suddenly Brian Robinson comes in, gets shot, and everyone loves Brian Robinson and kind of forgot about Antonio Gibson, including what's his name, Rivera out there in Washington. So yeah, I'd love to see an Antonio Gibson rebound here. Let's add that to the to-do list. Let's join the league soon and see where we can add him so we can update our chit chat next show. But we've got the Chaos League tonight here, Chris. We got a 12-teamer. We've got an IDP league. We're not going to talk about IDP. So when we do talk about these teams tonight, it is strictly about the offense. I couldn't tell you 10 defensive players in the entire NFL right now if you paid me.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I'd love to be able to get into it, but there's only so much room in the old noggin up here. I can't fit in any defensive players in there. So it is what it is. But so just kind of keep those rankings in mind as we go through it. It is offense only, and Matt, this league I think is very kind of separated. I've got the top three teams in kind of a tier of their own. I've got this middle group, and I think you've got the bottom three or four teams kind of in that tier of their own as well. So this league was kind of very well separated, and I feel pretty good about my rankings tonight. Just based on that.
All right, let's get right down to it. For our new listeners out there, I see we got a couple of repeats from last night's show, Chris. Uh,
Oh
but
yeah.
for but for our newbies here tonight, what we're gonna do for you is we're gonna break this down into two shows. Show one, we're gonna power rank these teams 12 through 7, how we predict their offenses to finish in 2023. We'll take a little break. In the second show, we'll break it down from 6 to 1. Chris, we got a two tight end league here. Let's see what you like for the ranking. So if there's any mistakes, it's 100% on you. But you had a great showing last night. I expect you to stay hot. Let's get to number 12, where we've got Triple D Dub here, sitting at number 12. We got Mac Jones, Chuba Hubbard, Cam Akers, Jamar Chase, Robert Woods. We got Akins and Dwelly at tight end. Not what you want to see here in a two tight end league. Terrace Marshall, Prochet, Davis Mills as well. Guys on the bench worth a mention. We've got Jimmy Garoppolo. We've got Kenneth Walker going to get into that lineup. What else do we have here, Chris? We've got Drake London, Rashid Shaheed, Nico Collins, Curtis Samuel, Hayden Hurst, Chris. I'll say it every show. Not going to leave it out here. Love Hayden Hurst this year. I think that's going to be another late round guy. He's going like the 18th round, Chris. So I'm all in on Hayden Hurst at that price as well. Injured reserve has nothing special. Taxi squad has nothing special. He's got pick 102 in this draft, Chris, which is really nice because I think he does need to do a little bit of quarterback shopping. This is a very bad team here, Chris. What did you take away here?
I mean, yeah, there's just not a whole lot of talent here, right? I mean, Jamar Chase looks great, but I mean, there's not a lot surrounding him. You've got Kenneth Walker, you've got Cam Akers. uh, there's some guys on the bench you can maybe plug in. Drake London as well. So I mean, you've got that duo at least. Drake London, Jamar Chase, super young. You can build around them. I jettison these running backs. Our quarterback play is out and out disastrous with Mac Jones. And Davis Mills and Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't feel good about any of those guys this season. They're all sells for me. If they're starters week one, they got to be off the roster because somebody's going to be able to use them, and it's not going to be triple D dub. He's got a tank here. He's got to get the top quarterback at 102 and sell off these running backs for quality pieces. If I could get an absolute mint for Jamar Chase, I do it because that's the kind of thing, if you can get 4 firsts of value for basically anybody. And I think Jamar Chase is one of the few players that fits that bill. I think you have to do it. It's the easiest and you typically best way to jumpstart a rebuild. And this team desperately, desperately needs to acquire a lot of quality pieces, increases roster value. And honestly, the biggest shortcut to do that is selling Jamar Chase. As tough a pill as that is to swallow.
Yeah, and I know we said we wouldn't talk about the IDP, Chris. He's got Aaron Donald, which I don't know what D tackles go for in terms of trade value, but I'd send him away too. But the long and short of it, Chris, is we need bodies. We need we need to add a little more quantity to this roster. So I'm with you here on getting rid of Chase. I'd even explore giving up 102, Chris, because Davis Mills, he's going to be out. We do have Jimmy Garoppolo. And we do have Mac Jones. I don't think Mac Jones disappears. I think he's a guy that at least hangs around. So I don't think, especially since we're tanking, I don't think we necessarily need to roster a quarterback. So if I can get a whole bunch, listen, I'm not giving it away for free, but if I can get a whole bunch back for 102 and then attack the best quarterback in next year's draft, I think that's what I consider doing. The bottom line is we need a lot of pieces. And we're at least 2 years away from this thing being a relevant team.
In terms of 102, I would love to try and just trade back to like 104, take, the third best QB and get a little extra piece. It's all about just acquiring extra pieces with this team, with the pieces he does have. So I definitely look to explore that. Again, I wouldn't be opposed to selling that 102, but I'm fine just taking my top QB as well. I think you can't go wrong there either way.
Yeah, I think best case scenario, Chris, is 106 and a 2024 first, which is something that we've suggested in a couple different places. I don't know if that's possible. We'll check out to see who has 106, 107. But listen, I'd love to add one of the top 2 wide receivers. We don't love this class here, but I think those are 2 guys that I wouldn't mind adding to my team, but more importantly, adding the 2024 first as well. So just something to consider. Again, we need quantity here more than anything. Chris, let's get to our number 11 team. They finished dead last year. We have Rappy's Ledge here. Rappy's Ledge, where we've got Baker Mayfield, Rachaad White, Breece Hall, George Pickens, Amon-Ra, Rucker and Okonkwo at tight end, Sky Moore, Christian Watson, and Khalil Herbert currently at Superflex. Guys who might be heading in, Kyle Trask. We'll see what happens there, but he's already got Baker, so it's not like we're going to get 2 QBs there. Odell Beckham, we got Jameson Williams, Kadarius Toney, Trey McBride. That's it for the offense down here on injured reserve, and taxi is empty. We've got 104 and we've got 106. There's our 106, Chris, that we were talking about. Whole slew of 2s as well. Since this guy, both the things we suggested are not happening. Since this guy here who's in need of bodies as well, has 104 and 106. Chris, tell me about this team. I'm going to work out a trade with the last team.
This one is tough because I think he's got some quality position players, right? Like we've got Breece Hall, we've got Rachaad White, George Pickens, Amon-Ra, Christian Watson. You look at the bench and he's got Jameson Williams, Kadarius Toney, Odell Beckham. There's some pieces here on the in terms of position players, but quarterback is just so objectively bad that I can't rank him higher. And the position players he does have are interesting players, but they're not stars by any means, aside from the likes of Amon-Ra St. Brown and potentially Breece Hall. So, he's got these picks, he's got a ton of seconds as well. I think he's going to be adding quite a bit of help this year. He is going to get a QB at 104. He's probably going to get, either probably Gibbs or JSN at 6. So I think he's going to add two quality players in this draft, including a QB. But this is just not the year for this team. I think next year, this team could be much better. But he's got to find a way to shore up, a second QB after the guy he takes in the draft. And just kind of keep building around this thing. I don't know, what trades you're cooking up there, but I don't want to make any huge sort of deals with this team. Yeah, he needs help at tight end. Yeah, he needs help at QB, but running back and wide receiver, I think is going to be in good shape after this draft.
I'm going to need you to sign off on a deal here, Chris. I think I have it. So looking at his 24 picks here, Chris, he's got his own, plus he's got B Lynch, who I'm going to give a little spoiler alert here. We never give spoilers like this, but we're going to see him in the second show. So you've got him as a top 6 team in 2023. I won't give away where he is for suspense purposes, but do you give 106 and this projected mid to late 2024 first in exchange for 102? Now all of a sudden we've got our 2 locked in quarterbacks. You said you're happy with what he's got at position players. Do you consider that he's got these slew of second rounders as well, and he keeps his own first for next year? Why is that a bad play?
I think I like that, after kind of going through the roster again and seeing the position players he does have and sort of the upside plays he has on the bench and guys like Tyquan Thornton, Jamison Williams, Kadarius Toney. He's got Trey McBride as well at tight end, a guy, who I like quite a bit. I think I'm okay with that. I think that might be the cheapest way to get a young QB is to pay that 106 and a 2024 first that, again, spoiler alert, we project in the bottom half. So I like that deal a lot for both teams. I think it makes a whole lot of sense. And I think that might be the cheapest way for Rappy's Ledge here to come away with two quality young QBs.
Yeah, and I think, Chris, if you look at all of his seconds that he has as well, 205, 206, 209, I mean, could that be 3 swings at a tight end? And if people are going tight end crazy here because of the 2 tight ends, I wonder if that pushes a little bit of talent at the other positions down just a little bit. So I think this guy has set himself up nice. I've talked myself into it. I 100% give 106 and B Lynch's first to move up to 102. I don't need to worry about quarterback for the next 14 years at least. Because listen, these Bucks guys ain't getting it done, and there is not much after that. So I think that's a strong consideration. That's a deal that I do immediately right now. So let's get to number 10, Chris. We've got Go Buck Yourself at number 10. Go Buck Yourself at number 10. Looking at a roster of Justin Fields, James Conner, Aaron Jones, Jalen Waddle, Chris Godwin. We've got Higbee. We've got K. Dot at the tight end 2 spot, AJ Dillon, Garrett Wilson, and Desmond Ritter at the super flex spot. Guys on the bench. Nothing else at quarterback. Would have loved to see something else rather than Desmond Ritter. We talked about that a little bit last night's show. Jahan Dotson down here, Logan Thomas. That's about it for our offense. Taxi squad's got, I'll throw Jake Ferguson a bone with a mention on the show. He's got 103. Okay, that makes me feel a whole lot better here, Chris. And he's got 203 as well. So he should add a couple of impact players, and in particular, a quarterback. Oh, man. We'll talk a little bit more in a second. Give me your initial thoughts, Chris.
So I kind of liked this team at first glance and then just kind of kept pushing him down because, aside from Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson and Jalen Waddle, I have a major hesitancy across all the rest of the roster, right? 103 is going to be a rookie quarterback. I don't know if Desmond Ritter and that rookie quarterback is going to produce enough this season for this team to be relevant, but I could see it happening if things break right, right? So you need James Conner, Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon, these two tight ends. They all of them need to be quality fantasy players week in, week out, because this team really has no depth. And that was sort of my biggest issue with it, is the lack of depth. There's just nothing here. You're basically, what you see is what you get. Yes, you have these picks, and that helps a lot. But in terms of being competitive this year, I just have a hard time seeing it unless things just break absolutely perfect for them. And that's just not something I'm in the business of projecting, everything going perfectly. So I think the foundation's pretty good in Justin Fields, Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, and the 103. But aside from that, I mean, I've just got major question marks throughout the whole lineup, and the lack of depth really scares me.
Oh man, Chris, I'm kind of torn on this team, and I think we
Me
might
too.
we might have a little competition for getting a deal done with that 11th place team that we just talked about, because I think this might be a candidate as well to back off a 103 and drop into 106. Chris, I kind of want to sell with this team. I really don't like teams that have the likes of James Conner, Aaron Jones at running back. And then guys like Garrett Wilson and younger players like that, Justin Fields, Desmond Ritter. I think I'd like to go super young here, Chris. Get off of Aaron Jones and James Conner. I don't think this team is elite enough. We're not adding anything in terms of the draft because, we already have two quarterbacks. Is that going to be a significant upgrade? Desmond Ritter to whoever he gets at 103? I don't know. It might be, but, I'm not going to bank on that. So I don't think this team is a legit contender. We've got to sell because we are about to miss the window on James Conner, Aaron Jones, and possibly AJ Dillon. Tyler Higbee may have sailed already as well. So I think we've got to sell with this team, Chris. Keep Justin Fields, add a few more pieces, see what we have with Desmond Ritter. Listen, if Desmond Ritter stinks, that means we're in line to pick up a quarterback at the top of next year's draft. So let's ride it out with these quarterbacks, try to back off a 103.
Yeah, and I'd even throw Chris Godwin into that mix as a nice sell piece as well. I think he's, not quite old enough where people are backing off him, but he's not a young guy either. So I'd add him to the mix as well. I mean, he's already 27, so I just build around Fields, Waddle, Wilson, and my 103. If I'd also, like you said, I would explore selling that 103. But I wouldn't marry myself to take a bad deal to get off that 103. So yeah, I mean, Connor and Jones and Dylan, and Godwin, those guys are going to score enough points to kind of be annoying to you if you because you're not going to be bad enough to bottom out, and you're not going to be good enough to really kind of make a playoff run. So those guys are just going to be kind of annoyingly scoring points for you. So I think you've got to get them off the roster, rebuild. I don't see this team ever being a real contender.
Yeah, at least not this year anyway. So,
Right.
yeah, it's got to be a sell for me there, Chris. And there should be plenty of suitors, I would believe. Chris, let's get to our number 9 squad here. We got Nightmare on Al Street. We've got Huntley, Cook, Kareem Hunt, Steph Diggs, AJ Brown, Dawson Knox, and Darren Waller. We got Dobbs, McKenzie, Hollywood Brown at Superflex currently. Hopefully, we can replace him. Of course, we do with Derek Carr as our first guy up. James Robinson. Todd Gurley, great running back in his day, still rostered here. Jacoby Myers, Foster Moreau, like to see his little comeback here. Isaiah Likely as well. Down here on injured reserve, we've got Darnell Mooney, KJ Hamler. I wonder if he might just be done, Hamler, man. A lot of people had high hopes for him, myself included, but that just may not be a thing. Khalil Shakir may be worth a mention down here on Taxi Squad. We've got 109, 204, 309 in this draft. Oh man, Chris, I could see why you've got him down here. There's plenty of holes. It's not overly deep. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, man. Honestly, this team could probably be ranked lower. Honestly, it's got a ton of holes here. He's got Diggs, he's got Brown. I think he's probably got the best tight end duo that we've seen so far, and that's that that was my reasoning for pushing him up. But this is still the bottom tier for me. I think this is 9 through 12. I've got them all in the kind of the same bottom tier. But this team at least has a couple game breakers in Diggs and AJ Brown. I think Darren Waller is a nice player. On the Giants, but I mean, again, I think overall, this is one of the more clear sells for me of the bottom four. I think this has to be a full blown sell, complete rebuild. I'd tear the whole dang thing down. There's not a player on this roster that I'd keep and build around. I just looked up, Matt. AJ Brown's going in the top 5 of position players right now. So if I could get that sort of payout for him all day, every day, Diggs as well, I'd love to get off of. This is just a clear sell for me. There's just not nearly enough here to be remotely competitive.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. Everyone's got to go. I mean, I think this team needs to be dropped down maybe a notch or two in your rankings, but you said this is a tier of its own down here. We've really only got one quarterback to speak of. That's Derek Carr. I'd love to send him on his way. We've got really nothing on this bench at all to speak of. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. I think we're at least 2 years away from this thing being any type of relevant in this league. It's going to take a great deal of work. This offense, hey, maybe he's got the best IDP in the league. I don't know. But listen, for this quarterback situation, this running back situation in the flex, I mean, this is a pretty bad team.
Now, how did this team's got the 109. I mean, this team made the playoffs last season, and I'm racking my brain trying to figure out how, and maybe it was. I mean, maybe it was the IDP. Maybe the IDP played a huge role. I mean, I don't want to speak on it because I don't really know, but I'm trying to figure out how the heck that happened with this starting lineup because there's not a whole lot here in terms of the offense. And I think, listen, we don't need to dwell on it. It's just a clear sell on the offensive side of the ball. There's just not enough talent here. We've only got the one quarterback. Yeah, I mean, this team, honestly, at second glance, could probably go a little lower.
All right, Chris, let's check out our number 8 team. And we've got Big Country at number 8. Big Country at number 8. We're looking at Dak Prescott, Dalvin Cook, David Montgomery, Christian Kirk, Mike Williams, Hunter Henry, Bobby Tonyan, Nook Hopkins, Travis Etienne, and Tom Brady at the super flex spot. Geez, we got nothing to put in there. Cooper Kupp probably going to be that guy at super flex. We've got Treylon Burks as well down here. Michael Gallup as well. Injured reserve and taxi squad giving us nothing. No picks to speak of until the 5th round. Not sure who you're getting down there. Boy, Chris, things were looking really good till we saw Tom Brady at the super flex spot. I was starting to say, this is finally a good team. You were, spot on with the bottom 4 having their own tier. This team needs a little bit of work, but I think it's got the bones.
It's a major step up. I mean, no doubt about it. This is the tier break. If he had, Matthew Stafford, or Derek Carr. I mean, this is a team I'd go out and go grab Derek Carr if I could. Give up Treylon Burks, who's sitting here on the bench, plus Elijah Moore if you want, and go get yourself Derek Carr, plug him in, and I think you've got yourself a team that's a much more competitive potential playoff team. So I mean, listen, we got a lot of points here on this roster. Dak, Dalvin Cook, wherever he ends up, David Montgomery is going to score a ton of points. Same thing with Christian Kirk. We've got 2 decent tight ends here in Tonyan and Hunter Henry. DeAndre Hopkins, wherever he ends up. Listen, I think we could, we've got Cooper Kupp here as well. So I think, this team, I'd go out and get a cheap quarterback and make a run at this thing, try and make the playoffs. And see where it goes. You've got kind of quality talent, I think, throughout, except for that super flex spot. Some question marks as well. It's not an elite team, but I think this team could sneak into the playoffs with a move or two.
I would do everything I can to get Matthew Stafford on this team. I think that's an absolute perfect play. Love to stack up him and Kupp. See, he's got no second or third next year either, Chris. Boy, it's unfortunate. I think what you see is what you get. I love Treylon Burks being our only, and I don't love that it's the only, but I like him being a guy that we can bring off the bench this year. I think that's a fine little depth piece. I wish I had just a little bit more. Because the window's closing on this team, Chris. That's the reality of the situation with a few of these guys starting to get phased out in their situations. Dalvin Cook, David Montgomery, to name just a few, may have already brought in Mike Williams' replacement out there in Los Angeles. So I think we've got to either get after it this year, but if we start 2-5, Chris, I am sounding the horn and reverse pivoting in a quick way to get rid of these guys and start to load up for the future.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think you really have to see how the first 5, 6 weeks go, and then sort of pick a direction. I think that's probably the smart move. But I think in the offseason, you can certainly make a play for a cheap quarterback, with this team and see what happens. I'm with you there. If I could get Stafford, I think it's a huge win for this team, and just kind of see where it goes the first month, 6 weeks of the season.
And there's always the hope, Chris, that Tom Brady comes out of retirement, although we seem to reiterate it very clearly that is not going to happen this year. All right, Chris, our final team of part one of the show, our seventh ranked team. We've got HB89 at 7. HB89. We've got Deshaun Watson. We've got Nick Chubb, Damian Pierce. We've got Gabe Davis, DK Metcalf, Gerald Everett, Noah Fant, and Njoku, Peoples Jones, and Russ Wilson. Guys on the bench worth a mention. We've got Jordan Love's nice little quarterback 3, Alvin Kamara, hopefully playing this year. We've got the aforementioned Brian Robinson. Chris Olave will be in the starting lineup. Obviously, Calvin Ridley. I love this team here, Chris. This, for me, might be a step up from what we just saw. It's clearly ranked ahead, so I think you did a nice job there. I might even say it's a pretty clear tier. Rashad Penny, McCole Hardman to mention on IR. Nothing really as I scan through the taxi squad, although he's got a million guys there. 105, 207, 208. So a couple guys possibly coming in this draft. I like this team here, Chris. I could see this team being a real thorn in some people's backsides.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I like this team as well. It's probably a step up. I think that's reasonable to say that. I think he's maybe just a little too reliant on this Cleveland offense, though, with Deshaun Watson, Nick Chubb, David Njoku. I mean, DPJ is not going to be in that lineup. He's going to put Chris Olave in there or Calvin Ridley or what have you. But I think overall solid. There's really not a whole lot to like here. You've got Pierce maybe gives you some pause. Kamara gives you some pause at the running back position. If those guys don't work out, I think we're kind of scrambling a little bit, but that's maybe a minor quibble. I think it's a good quality team, Matt. I think this team's going to be fighting for a playoff spot. Wouldn't be surprised at all if he finished as high as fourth, maybe even third. He's knocking on that, next tier above him. But this spot here, 4 through 7, you can see I think these teams are ranked really close. I put them down a little bit just because I think once you take out Gabe Davis and DPJ and put in, Olave and Kamara, I think you realize maybe this team only has, one depth piece, and that's Calvin Ridley. Maybe that's not quite as good as the other teams ahead of them. Plus you've got Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, who flat out stunk last year, both of them at quarterback. You got Jordan Love on the bench, but to me, we've got 3 quarterbacks here that now all of a sudden we need to see them do it. So that just put them down a little bit for me, but would not be shocked at all if this team ended up playing in the semifinals.
Yeah, great point on the quarterbacks, Chris. They definitely passed the name brand test, right, with Russ Wilson and Deshaun Watson, but you said it perfectly. Let's see him do it. Then when we stare at these tight ends too, Chris, with Gerald Everett and Noah Fant, we love Gerald Everett. Rode him pretty hard a couple times last year, many times actually, I should say. Noah Fant, another guy. We just got to see it from him. He's got all the potential in the world. It seems like. Can he get it? And you said it perfectly with the Browns offense. I don't know if that's where we want to hitch our wagon to right now. I think it's got the potential, but as you said, now we've got to see them do it. Brian Robinson, we'll see what happens with him. I think the pieces are here, Chris. I definitely think that. I think 105, we've seen pretty much exclusively that being Jahmyr Gibbs. I love throwing him into the mix on this team. I think that's a nice little spot for him to be. I think that's a nice piece that's going to contribute right away. I like this team situation, man. This is an exciting team, but I could see the floor dropping out too. I think that's in the realm of possibilities.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a kind of wide range of outcomes with this team, I think. So yeah, I think the 105, if it is Jahmyr Gibbs, could be a huge get for this team and make it that much better. Just kind of strengthening things. So I do like where this team is headed. I think it's going to be inconsistent this year, but again, I do think it's got a real shot to make the playoffs and make some noise if it gets hot at the right time.
Just got to hope the Browns right the ship early and often. All right, that's going to do it for us. Part one. We got part two coming up in just a little bit. Make sure you like and subscribe while you're waiting. See you guys in just a little bit.